Super smart, super high energy guy when it comes to his training modalities. And so we wanted to get him on not only to share what it was like, his military experience, but also what he's doing in the fitness world. You know,
just like, show me what you got. And he was like, you're going to learn how to make bombs and how to blow things up. And
so no longer blowing stuff up, just getting people ripped now. Oh, I mean, your legs are great, man.
They got to get bigger though. That's the thing. So
to competing with you. And
there she is. She's got her own little page here, all decked out and whatnot with all of her, you know, girl colors and things.
This episode is brought to you by First Detachment. First Detachment is an expert formulated supplement company founded by renowned coach Justin Harris. We've combined science with real-world experience in each product. We are battle-tested. Are you? Find your battle today at firstdetachment.com. All right, we're live. Hey, YouTube, thanks for tuning in today. First Detachment YouTube channel here. Got an exciting one for you. First and foremost, my co-host, a little better looking fellow than that other guy, than Mr. Justin Harris. So Big Paul jumping in.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, Big Paul jumping in to help. If you don't know, Big Paul has an amazing YouTube channel as well, Anabolic Bodybuilding. Check that out. Has coaching and just a ton of live Q&As and things. And so we collaborate pretty regularly. Someone from First Detachment team, myself, and others. And then, you know, one of the really cool things I like about our guest today, and Colton Luke's, what we talked about as well during his episode, is, you know, at our heartbeat, at our core, is just with our founding, one of our co-founders were, you know, just really proud that he was a retired special forces and his since moved on. However, it's something that we still want to continue to do to give back to the military community any way we can. So I've known Nick for a long time, really excellent competitor in bodybuilding. We'll talk about that today, but also super smart, super high energy guy when it comes to his training modalities. And so we wanted to get him on not only to share what it was like, his military experience, but also what he's doing in the fitness world. And hopefully we'll get some future collaborations as well that can, you know, just continue to help lift up what Nick's doing. I know your business is growing really fast, but anything we can do to help support that as well. So thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. It's obviously a pleasure and an honor to be here and, you know, kind of do this with you guys. So I'm excited and, you know, let's get after it. See if we can, you know, teach some people some things, you know?
Good deal. Well, Nick, take us through just kind of what you're in the military, like walk us through how long you're there, what you did. And as you come out of that story, you know, what the journey was into fitness.
So started off, I was always into fitness. I remember talking about when I was younger, I was like, I want to find a job where I can stay fit and lean and get paid for it. That was kind of my job. Like that was the thought. Probably right. Exactly. You know, I was young. And of course the thought of like special forces hit me. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to be a Navy SEAL. And then I found out, if you guys know anything about, what is it it's during their little buds phase where they're doing the little dunking, where they drop them into the pool and tie all their stuff up. That was a no-go. I was like, no. I was like, I'm not that comfortable in the water. So moved away from that. And then it was, you know, what was the next best thing? I was like, well, let me try Army Rangers or, you know, Special Forces, do Green Beret, something like that. And so I went in talking to the recruiters, and they went in initially trying to be infantry. And what they did was they were like, oh yeah, that's great. You want to be infantry, but you got to have 20/20 vision to be an infantryman. And I was like, oh, and, you know, I'm like, what was I? I think I was 19. So I'm like, oh no, you know, that's so bad. That's so terrible. Well, what can I do? And they're like, well, son, you ever heard of an 88 Mike? And that's a truck driver in the Army. And I was like, no. I almost walked right out of the office. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I came here to do the cool guy stuff and whatnot. So they pitched to me a combat engineer, which is basically a demolitions expert, right? And I was like, show me what you got. And he was like, you're going to learn how to make bombs and how to blow things up. And I was like, where do I sign?
Nice.
That's where that started. So yeah, I went off. Go ahead.
You originally from the Texas area or?
No, Minnesota. You guys will hear my accent hardcore coming out here.
All right. Good deal.
That's hilarious, man. My brother-in-law did the exact same thing in the Army.
Yeah? How do you like it?
Yeah, he loved it. He started off with EOD and then he switched over to that. And then I think he was attached to a Rangers unit, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And now he's a federal marshal.
There we go. Yeah, he stayed fed the whole time, huh? Good for him.
Yeah, that's really cool, man.
Yeah, it's good retirement too. If you stick with federal, a lot of those,
Uh-huh.
like a lot of Army people will go and they'll be cops afterwards because it'll just transition over and they can just keep on, they get their retirement that way.
So no longer blowing stuff up, just getting people ripped now.
Pretty much, yeah. So in the Army, I had a lot of people come up and they're like, you know, I was kind of the PT stud, right? I still wanted to be, I still had the dream of staying fit and, you know, getting paid for it. So I pretty much took my endeavors and everything like that into the Army. I was, you know, I'm 6'5" and I could run a 12:45 2 mile. So I was really fast and I kind of cheated the system. I don't know. I just worked really, really hard. And for my height, people wouldn't expect me to be athletic, but I was just stomping people. So if people would come up and they're like, well, write me a training plan. And I'm like, okay. And I would legitimately put my effort in. I would give them my all. And then you give it to your NCO and you're like, here you go, Sergeant, try this out. You're going to love it. It's going to help you lose weight. And they wouldn't even, you know, they'd look at it and be like, oh yeah, cool. And they wouldn't even touch it. So, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, I see your pics on Instagram, 6'5", 275. You would have been a hell of a tight end.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I got brick hands though. That's the problem.
Oh man,
I
gotta be able
can't
to catch the ball.
No, I can't catch it all. It's terrible.
This is a recent one, right? Let me see here. So is this one of your more recent ones?
Yeah, that was post show, I believe. Yeah, 8 weeks out.
8 weeks later.
Well, yeah, it's just doing the reverse. So I'm tall, so I got a lot to fill in on my frame. I'm just praying to Jesus that one day I'll, you know, be nice and full. Maybe I'll shrink a little bit in the process and it'll be good.
Get a little shorter.
Yeah,
I feel you, man.
I mean, I hope so.
I'm not 6'5". I'm a hair under 6'2". It's a lot when you're tall, especially arms, man. I have a hell of a time filling up my arms.
So genetically blessed. I got to give that one to my dad. My arms are pretty good. It's I've had problems building chest and then obviously legs too.
Yeah, it's not like they're small; they're just so long.
Oh, maybe your legs are great, man.
They got to get bigger though. That's the thing. They got to.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that big, I mean, you probably. How tall? I think Jamie the Giant, the guy that's pro body, I think he's around 6'5". But I mean, you could probably. I mean, to get like pro size, you probably have to be 350 in the off season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any aspirations of going that route, or are you just doing this for the heck of it?
No, I do actually. Like the intention is to get into the pros. Now, obviously, with my size and physique, I don't anticipate walking on an Olympia stage just because, you know, it's, hey, if it happens, that's great. But at the same time, most of those guys are in the 5 foot range. They're sitting, you know, they're real stocky and wide. So getting to the pros, absolutely. Performing in the pros, absolutely. Walking on the Olympia stage, if the cards lay that way, absolutely. You know, but
you're an open competitor, right? Or are you doing classic?
So I started off in classic, and they have, you know how it is. They need that, you know, 30-inch waist. I have a 40-inch waist, and my wife. It was so funny. You guys would have loved this. My wife was sitting there for years, and she was like, she'd see the open guys go up on stage, and then we'd get in the classic lineup, and she's like, "Hey, honey, you're way bigger than them." And I'm like, yeah, but I want to do classic, you know, because I was new bodybuilder. I was like, well, that's where the good looking guys go. They go to classic, you know, opens for the ugly people.
She didn't want to break it to you
yeah. So she was like, honey, you should maybe think about switching. And then, I just kind of put my cards together and realized it was this last year. I had a younger guy, and, you know, his conditioning wasn't even that great. I was peeled. I was really tight. Everything looked great. But he just had that look that, you know, straight up. I mean, the man he had like at least a 29-inch waist. It was just like, there was nothing there. So he had that perfect look, and he beat out, you know, won the overall, everything like that. And I walked away, you know, being like, whoa. And that was kind of the light bulb moment where I was like, all right, let's actually measure my waist. It was 40 inches. And I'm like, okay, I got to switch classes.
Well, that's what I was talking to John Rivas, and, you know, he was like, send me some pictures of, because I started dieting a little bit, and he's like, send me some pictures like twisting and stuff. And I did that. He's like, yeah, it's way better. I'm like, yeah, but I still don't think so, man. I'm like, I just remember being up there, and I was at the top of the weight class, but I was 23, 24 pounds heavier than everybody else. And that it was at the state level, it's such a big weight class. And I just think I'm too blocky, you know, like it's
go back.
Small waist for everybody else. But Justin messaged me, was like, nope, go kick ass as a super at a state show.
Mhm.
I'll do really well, but I kind of want to over diet and just.
You can look,
Good
I mean,
fun.
like when I'm assessing clients, I'm sure you can look at it, Nick, when you see it. Yeah, I mean, I can just look at their frame and I mean, they'll ask me,
Yes.
tell right away whether you're classic or a bodybuilding guy.
I'll shoot you
Yes.
over some pictures because I don't know. I don't know if Justin's just being because he likes open better. Because like I said, I got John in one ear and Justin in the other. I'm like,
Well, I asked Justin the same thing because I'm 6'2", but I've got I've got a really small waist. Even when I'm fat, I'm like 32
Oh,
inches
wow.
waist.
Oh, you lucked out.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I can't grow my arms, but yeah, I was like, should I do classic? He was like, nah, open all the way.
I don't know if he just likes open. He likes putting size on people.
I'm too big for classic.
Now you are. Yeah,
for
sure. Let me see this one. I think this is one of your classic ones here. I'll take a quick look. I don't know if you guys see that on the screen.
That was so long ago. So
Yeah,
that's one of my clients, actually. That's Regan. Basically,
that's not you. Okay, my bad.
So the one over here on the left, that's Regan with the mustache. He's trying to be Chris Bumstead. And then the one on the right, that was me, with the clean shaven face. That was in the Army. So I was competing while I was in the military, which, everyone told me I couldn't do. They're like, oh, it's not possible. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I did it. So that was my first show. Had no idea what I was doing. Didn't do any water manipulation. Didn't do anything at all. And I just showed up, got ripped, and was like, ta-da. And I met my first coach at that show because he was like, did you do anything with water? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, okay, dude, come here.
You've grown a little bit since then.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
What I'm just curious to kind of, how does that thought process come in to play? Like, I'm in the Army doing my thing. You're kind of this PT guy. And then, hey, I'm going to go on stage, even though everyone says I can't. Like, what?
I'm stubborn, honestly. That's the best way I could put it. I just don't. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to put my skills into play. I didn't want to sit and be like everyone else. I wanted to do something more. And this was an avenue where I could do more, because a normal Army routine, you wake up, you do your PT, you work pretty much all the way until 5 o'clock, and then you go home. The last position I had was with the SFAB, which is kind of a detachment off of Special Forces. It's basically a training unit that goes in and they'll train foreign nationals. And then from there, those foreign nationals get sent up to the Green Berets, and the Green Berets will take them out on missions and continue to facilitate training and everything like that. But we started off training them, and I had a better work schedule. So I was like, well, I have a better work schedule. I've wanted to do this for a while. My wife was encouraging, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna launch into it and do it. And my first show, I loved it. It was the Kuclo Classic, as you guys saw. And it was it was awesome. Great. Yeah, it was great. It was a good time.
Yeah, we were just down with Mr. Kuclo not too long ago, and probably going to hit up his show here in Michigan soon.
Is he in Texas now?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, he's based out there. He works out at that hidden gym. That's where we had that seminar at.
Okay.
So yeah, he was there, and he's going to have his show in Michigan pretty soon. I told him I was going to do it, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, man, that so PT in the morning, work all day, bodybuilding in the evening, right?
Correct. Yes. So,
that's what,
go ahead.
That just makes me laugh because I get guys all the time that are like worried about overtraining. And I'm like, dude, like you're not even close to overtraining. There's people that work way harder than you that do this. That's an example right there.
A guy that smoked it in one of the classic shows I was in, he was like one of those telephone line workers. He's like out in the cold, climbing the lines and all this stuff all day long, and came in, did his cardio, did his lifting on next to no calories. I mean, he was peeled. And I'm like, well, there goes that whole overtraining thing. Like this guy's job would put me in bed for a couple of days. But so what now? And when you were there in the Army, when did you get married? Was it after the Army or?
Nope, mid-Army. So that was, I believe it was like 3 or 4 years in. My wife is going to watch this and pull my hair out. But so I believe it was like 3 or 4 years. She knows I don't remember any of this stuff. And then we got married. I was an E4, so a specialist, and she was too, actually. And she went to OCS, became an officer. I stayed on the plebeian side of things and continued to be an NCO and went down the non-commissioned officer route. And then she pretty much from there, we got married in Georgia. And then we got stationed in Fort Campbell after that. And that was crazy. Like doing dual military is insane. Like having kids and trying to balance military and normal.
Wow.
I think that's what really primed me for bodybuilding, is because like you don't work normal hours as a soldier. Like I was gone all the time, and I was training to be a Green Beret. That's what I wanted to do. So I just kind of took that and applied it, the same things I was already doing, into bodybuilding. So instead of running 8-10 miles per day, I just started lifting harder and eating more, you know?
I think what's really cool too is, so Ariel, your wife, she's involved with the business, the military. You guys got the kids. You can see on a lot of your posts, like it's just a family thing where I think people are scared to work too hard, but if you integrate the family into your work, you know, it's actually a lot more enjoyable, is what I've been told, and finding with my daughters too, where when they understand it, and then I get off like, well, Daddy, it's my turn to start my YouTube channel, you know, or whatever. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, how you talk a little bit about that, you know, how she got into competing with you and that dynamic.
So she pretty much saw me doing it, right? She came to, I believe it was like my third show, because my first show she was deployed, and that, yep, there she is. She's got her own little page here, all decked out and whatnot, with all of her, you know, girl colors and things. It's great.
All the women.
So, so basically, she saw the first show and just really kind of got into it. And you know, because of the military and everything like that, we had some struggles early on in the marriage. Like there was a lot, because we were never home. We never got to see each other. So it was an avenue of which we could bond together. And she, you know, she just wanted to, I don't know if she wanted to prove something or if it was something that she just wanted to pursue it. And it just ended up kind of manifesting like that. And it was great. So she's trying to bulk up now, because I finally got her away from bikini. I was like, honey, that's great. I know you want to do bikini, but I was like, you should maybe go to a different class. I was like, you know, you guys are in the industry, you know. So I was like, maybe try wellness, maybe try something. So now she's going over to wellness, and she's finally getting some legs on her and stuff. It's pretty fun to watch. She's doing really good. She's working really hard. So I'm excited to get her back on stage.
That's awesome.
So now in the military, was she technically above you in the military in her rank? Or?
Yes. Yeah, she was.
I thought I caught up on that. I was like, I been there, done that.
Yeah. I wanted to work hard, and she wanted to sit behind a desk. So no, I'm just kidding.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's fun. I think as people can hear about the dynamic and how you work through that together. I mean, I think one thing that, you know, Paul and the audience doesn't know too, but what's pretty cool is about your educational videos. You do them in a fun, lighthearted way, but even sometimes this is going to sound bad, but yelling, but in a playful way at your wife about having too much caffeine after a certain amount of time or too much oil or too much whatever. So I think it's cool to see the family kind of all interplay there. So is that something that you guys try to plan to do to have fun, or is that just a natural day in the life at the Crayne household?
It's impromptu, you know, like we're both so busy that like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm sitting there and I've been griping on her. That whole thing was like, I gripe at her all the time, because she's just a coffeeholic. She's always drinking coffee, but then I'm making all these posts and she hears me with my clients constantly. I have a little checklist and I have all my charts and whatnot. I'm like, hey, your coffee's at this time. Try moving it up into the day, because your circadian rhythms and you blah, 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 that whole thing. And then she hears this every day, and yet she still goes off, and she's technically one of my clients. So I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, that doesn't work. That does not work well.
I know.
She was on one of the episodes earlier, Brooke Rosie. She's brilliant, functional nutritionist, and actually ran some really good testing on Amber and found like H. pylori and some gut health stuff that's like legitimately needs intervention, like really bad. As I'm like sitting there for like 6 months, like, this is not natural. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And you know, sure enough, found out like right below celiacs on the test as well for gluten.
Wow.
Just all kinds of issues when she eats it. And I've been telling her, you know, you can't tell her. You just couldn't tell her. So I'm like, whatever Brooke wants, whatever it costs, it's like, just listen to her and do her thing. So
yep. I love it. So Ariel, go ahead.
I was gonna say, how about you, Paul? Any close friends or family members that you ever have to deal with that don't kind of want to listen but actually don't listen? Or
Oh, my daughter.
She's a volleyball player, right?
Yeah, she comes to the gym with me. She doesn't listen to anything I tell her at the gym.
How old is she again?
She'll almost 16.
Yeah, she'll be 11 pretty soon here.
She won't even lift with me anymore. She just goes off and does her own thing. I'm like, all right, you go do your thing. I'm
gonna get my hooks in her pretty soon. But then as soon as puberty continues to go, might be distracted a little bit different.
It's cool that she's in the gym. I can't get my son. He won't. He just wants to play video games. No, Jim. I want to back up for a second. You were talking about the caffeine thing. So you track caffeine. I'm interested in that.
I do, yes. So I'm a certified nutritionist as well. I spend a lot of time looking. I mean, I can read blood work. I'm really into what these things actually do to the body and what you can like the different things that can be leveraged and when and where and why, right? Like, why are we taking supplements? When are we taking supplements? What are we doing? Well, caffeine in itself, in my mind, it's a drug. So it's like, okay, great. Of course. It's legal. That's awesome. We all drink caffeine. I love coffee. I'm not going to complain. But how are we, in the sense of being athletes, how are we properly utilizing that tool? Are we using it to stay awake? Because really all it is an adenosine suppressant, meaning it's just going to it's just going to hold off you being tired. It doesn't actually give you energy. You might get a little jittery, but it's not going to, it doesn't really stimulate you. It kind of does, but doesn't. So the way that I see it is it's like,
it's not actually a stimulant, is it?
Yeah.
If I understand the pathway, the way it works.
No, not really. So it's really interesting where people use it as a stimulant, but it's not. So you have this, and it has an extremely long, half-life as well. So the half-life is 8 hours. So now you got 16 hours of it being fully in your system. So the way that I see it is I'm like, well, if I'm drinking coffee in the morning and that half-life is 8 hours, I'm usually hitting my crash where you actually feel that adenosine spike. So it's no longer being suppressed. It starts to come back. And I usually get tired around 1 or 2 o'clock pretty regularly. So I can physically feel the adenosine kick back in. And then, if I was to just drink another cup of coffee, well, that means that I'm going to be suppressing that, tired hormone, if you will, while I'm trying to sleep when I want to be tired. So that's why I deliberately just abstain. I love coffee. I usually, if I can get 2 cups in the morning, that's great. But even today I was working, got my cup. I went to the gym, came back, and I was doing some check-ins. And I was like, man, I'm really tired. I want a cup of coffee. And I looked and it was 12:40. And I'm like, oh, I was very depressed. I could not have another cup.
Yeah, it was just interesting because I've been trying to stay away from it, especially in the off season. And I've been trying to get my clients to stay away from it. I was just curious to hear your thoughts about it. I'd never heard anybody else mentioning monitoring coffee before or caffeine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way I understood it, it's not actually a stimulant. It works through that adenosine pathway to block it, essentially, right?
Yes, correct.
And then it tricks you into not feeling tired, essentially, right? Yeah. Yep. So it's not actually a stimulant. Like something like ephedrine or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Just overall too, Nick, what's your clientele range from? I mean, what type of people are you working with?
So ideally competitors at this point, just because the disciplinary action, right? It's tough for me to work with lifestyle now because I'm so regimented for so long and having prior military service and doing the things that I've done. It's hard. I don't deal with excuses very well. So I'm kind of a workhorse when it comes to being a coach. So it's like, well, I couldn't get this done. And I'm like, what's your excuse? And they're like, oh, and I'm like, well, let me tell you something. And I literally have a mountain of stuff where I'm like, I've literally done everything you've already done and no excuse is going to work because I've done bodybuilding whilst doing all these things. So I take on lifestyles, but it's mainly they got to be really committed to what they're doing. And most of the lifestyles I take on are people that have actual health problems and they need someone that can read that blood work and get them to their doctor and tell them, what they need to do. I deal with a lot of pre-diabetic insulin resistant people that don't even know why. They're like, I can't lose weight. And I'm like, well, run your blood work, right. And they do their bloods. I look over everything and I'm like, well, look, that you're insulin resistant. You're not going to lose weight. You need to we can try to death diet you down. Sure. But you've already redlined your body. So at this point, there needs to be some sort of intervention to bring you back down to baseline. So that way we can start bringing you down and you can lose that weight naturally. And then we can get rid of the insulin resistance as a whole. So, but a lot of lifestyle people have a problem getting around that. They don't understand, you have to tell them 10, 15 times to go get blood work done. And then they finally do. And then you're like, see, I told you. And they're like, what? And you're like, I've been telling you this for a month and a half. So
what's your strategy for dealing with insulin resistance?
So usually what I do, so insulin resistance is one thing, right? I mean, obviously you can diet them down and that's an easy way to get rid of it, right? If there is anything that's severe, if they're up in like the 110s, 115s, usually I like to see if you can get them on some metformin, go tell them to go to the doctor, see if you can get something like that. And that's usually for like the insulin resistant side of the house. Or what I'll do is I'll just manipulate their carbohydrates, right? If it's really bad, I'll put their carbs around their training in the morning and around the training. And then I pretty much just titrate down throughout the day.
Right.
So that way they can get a prolonged time without carbohydrate before they go to bed, have a nice fatty meal before bed so they're not hungry. And that seems to level them out really well. If that doesn't work, I'm like, hey, okay, hard stop. Okay, you're not healthy enough to do this really. We need to really stop and kind of give you a reset. And that's when I go into like, when I first started this, I was all about fasting and things like that. And I know the medicinal benefits of fasting. So I will usually integrate some sort of long-term fast, not intermittent fasting, actual long-term, where I'm like, let's try like 2 days and see how you handle it. Okay, good. All right, you're feeling a little better. I'll have them prick their fingers and just be checking as things go. And if it doesn't start to really clear up by that point, I will actually do like some sort of, what is it? You have there's a long-term fast, which I usually only do for about a week, but then I do the, the fasting mimicking diet. I just cured a type 2 diabetic actually by doing fasting mimicking. He was on insulin for 20 years and could not get off it. Doctors had him on insulin forever, same old stories, same thing. We've all seen it. And I put him on a fasting mimicking diet and I put him on some semaglutide. And so he wasn't hungry. And after about a month, he's not on insulin. He's not it took us a year to get to that point, but about a month of that is when we finally got him off the insulin. He's on 500 milligrams of metformin. He used to be on like 2000. It was ridiculous. So it's so simple. The body already knows what it wants. We already have ways of dealing with these things. Medication, I always feel like is almost a last resort. It's like, okay, it's not working. What we're doing isn't working. So you gotta punch it in the face. Okay. If the diet can't fix it, if we can't fix it with food, then you need some sort of pharmacological intervention. That's generally how I approach it.
Yeah, semaglutide is a pretty fascinating drug. There's some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I like the approach of using the diet first to get people. I just out of curiosity, I've always had everybody in my family's diabetic, and it's always been a struggle with me. Although my issue is a little bit different. I have pancreatic insufficiency, but it's a weird thing. But yeah, that's a neat approach. I've never really. I used to mess around with fasting some, but it's not that conducive for bodybuilding. But for lifestyle people, that's an interesting approach. I never really had considered that for.
Yeah, I actually did it because with some people, like their first 2 weeks was more of a ketogenic approach to work on their insulin sensitivity. And I'm not saying I have some study to point to this that it worked great or anything, but I know that it did improve and then slowly brought carbohydrates back into more of a carbohydrate rotation. But I actually saw that what's his name? Hani. The pro coach, he used that with one of his guys. I watched one of his videos, but I used it before I saw that, because back when I first learned about bodybuilding was in the late 90s, and it was Dan Duchesne's Body Opus, where it was 5 days of keto, 2 days of loading, and a bunch of other crap. But so that was, it's kind of that mindset. But when they start going back to what you said, I have used that before, where it was like a 30-30-30. So like 30 first thing in the morning, because they're fasted for 8 hours. So they get 30% of their carbs there, 30 around their workouts, and maybe 10%, depending on when they worked out, like 10% was meal 2, and then their last meal was 0 or something like that. So depending on their activity level, I like to move it. Again, that's more for probably, general population people, but I always find that seems to help. And a good friend of mine just called me last night about our product Suppressor, because he saw it online, and it's a glucose disposal agent and how we formulated it. And so he does those ultra marathons. And I thought that was really interesting that his whole system is out of whack. He was been at a 107, a 102, higher his glucose measurement, A1C. Yeah. So it was interesting to hear that, but I started to ask him about some basic stuff too, like weight training, go for a walk after meals, monitoring. So he didn't down regulate his carbohydrates, but similar, I've heard you talk about it, Paul, where in a high day, you're just putting the pancreas to working overtime. For a bodybuilder, was a runner, he was doing essentially the same thing. We just don't think of it because he's not a big guy. He weighs like 145 pounds, but for his frame, he was smashing some serious amounts of carbohydrates because he's doing a 24-hour run.
Hitting the glucose drinks and the gel packs and things like that.
So he blasted himself out thinking he's being super healthy, and it just is what it is.
So
you're absolutely, go ahead.
Or go ahead.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right, Joe, when it comes to, the walks after meals and just kind of like those other facets too. Like GDAs are great. They work great. Like glucose disposal agents they're a great product. I didn't even think about that. One of the first things for a bodybuilder, like you said, fasting isn't conducive. So it's like, okay, give him a GDA first, see if that brings down his blood glucose. If not, okay, do some walking after meals, see if that works. And then after that, it's like, some clients just don't respond well to carbs. Like they're such an anabolic food source, and everyone has this weird stigma about them, but they're so powerful. And sometimes people just don't react well to carbs. So it's like, you might have a guy where you can feed him 50 avocados and he blows up like a horse, just as if he was on carbs, right? He just gets jacked and you're like, what just happened? Because his body is just so much more like fueled. Like one of the first guys I put on stage was all about fats. His body did not do carbs. It would bloat him. It would make him look terrible. And he got peeled and was putting on a large amount of size just by fats, So it's interesting that you say that with the walks and everything. I completely forgot about all that, but yeah, it's crazy what you can do with food and just looking at what they actually have,
Yeah, when I work with endurance athletes, I don't have a one size fits all diet, but I have been using more. I try to get them more fat adapted. I think that's probably a better fuel source for endurance athletes. I don't know, but like as you were saying, Nick, everybody's different. It's wild seeing the difference. Like me, if I don't eat carbs, I shrivel up. I turn into a stick. Yep. So that's my issue. I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I do think some of like just the hypertrophy you build, like the size, the roundness of the muscle has to do a little bit with the amount of carbohydrate impacts on the shape and size of the person, because like I was talking to my friend who the endurance athlete, and he's got very straight, smaller, he's a toned guy, he's a healthy guy, but you wouldn't confuse him for a bodybuilder, like having big round muscle bellies and stuff like that. He just never did any of that, sarcoplasmic, like just building the thicker, meatier kind of stuff. And so when he ate a lot of carbs, like he wasn't pushing out much. And we actually had a really good conversation about his hydration and sodium. Oh yeah, drink a lot of water. Yeah. I said hydration and sodium. I didn't say just water. So because if he doesn't have that, it's just gonna, struggle to stay in the bloodstream longer. Yeah. And then of course we had to talk about ketones after the Mark Bell thing. So
no.
Were you eating ketones while you're running? Because I don't know if did you see that, Paul, online? What happened there?
Yeah, where he went, his glucose went through the roof after running. Yeah, it was like he was hyping the tremic or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, it sounds like from talking to him, he had already had a lot of carbohydrates in his system, was running, probably a little dehydrated, less water and sodium, and then slammed a bunch of ketones. So it's like the perfect storm.
Yeah, some sort of electrolyte imbalance.
Yep. Got lightheaded, went into Starbucks and slammed a couple OJs, and it just like 300 or something. It was just
wow.
Yeah. So, anyways,
that's incredible. Yeah, I went hyping the tremic after a show one time, and my glucose went up to like 400.
Wow.
yeah, man.
How'd that feel?
Yeah, I couldn't see. That's what happened.
Yeah. Is that what happens to me sometimes on a high day? That makes sense.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing, because I mean it's like the river running the opposite direction, man. When all the so if you have low sodium, it's just pulling everything in the wrong direction. You can't uptake carbs.
Well, Nick, what else do you see? Maybe in female clients, is there a common theme you see there, common thread, as far as, of course, everyone's different and unique, but just for the sake of the audience out there too, like maybe one or two things that pop out that might be a tip or something they could apply.
Yeah, as far as female nutrition, what I've noticed is that women tend to respond better to fats over carbs. Like it's the funniest thing, because all women are, I call them carb monsters, right? Because they just want carbs. Like my daughter does nothing but eat bread. My wife is the same way, and women just love bread. You see them going to the Starbucks, getting their bagels, everything like that. So it's almost like when it comes to the sense of fitness and nutrition, I've found that they respond a lot better if you actually take their carbs down, give them a little bit more healthy fats, And at that point, it creates a better environment for them to actually grow. And another thing that people don't really know is that women actually have to train really, really friggin' hard. Like they just do. For some reason, I think it has something to do with, you know, and don't quote me on this because I'm not an expert in this, but I think it has something to do with like, you know, with babies and recovery and having to physically do that. You know, guys, we don't make babies, you know, contrary to popular belief nowadays, we can't make babies. So it's one of those things where I think their bodies are just fine tuned to be really resilient to damage and stress. So I found that, you know, not babying your female clients and actually just going after them and just being like, and they'll respond really well. Like, I feel like some of my females are more adherent than my men when I jump down their throat and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I suck. And then they'll get back at it and they'll do great. Whereas some of the guys will just completely shut down. And you're like, what
I
are you
think
doing?
there was you talking about the workload with women. I can't remember where I saw it, but there was some studies. I think it was Brad Schoenfeld that had it. I don't know if you follow him or not.
Probably, yeah. Yes.
Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. Yeah, I think he had a study. I read some of his books, but like how resistant women are to volume. Like they can handle like
Yes.
significantly more volume than men can. It's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
There's a girl at my gym that's a women's physique competitor in the IFBB, and I just like she's like we're in there doing back the same day. I'm done, and she's like halfway through her workout.
Yeah.
I see that too with like being a taller guy. I want to bring up strength in my lower back, of course, so I'm an old tall guy. So, you know, I got strength in the lower back, got to bring up the glutes and hamstrings. And I just look over. And again, you can only look over for a split second because if you look longer than that, you're hit. You're getting called out on social media for being a creep. But I just noticed, I'm like, my goodness, like 400-pound hip thrusters, you know, supersetted with single leg lunge and whatnot. I mean, it's just like you said, the volume is crazy. I tell a lot of young guys, I'm like, you want to, you know, get bigger. Like one of the things, follow what they're doing with the back half of your legs, because a lot of guys just don't know how to hit glute, hamstring, lower back development the right way. It's like that, or watch old West Side videos of how to strengthen that lower back. Cause there was a bunch of machines actually back when I was at Lifetime that I had ordered just strictly for that.
What kind of training I mean, what's your philosophy on training? What kind of training are you running with your clients?
So again, it depends on the client, right? You know, I am definitely not the cookie cutter coach. I am not a one size fits all coach, right? I look at their lifestyles. I look at what they're doing. I look at how they handle their training, what they even like to do in the first place. When it comes to a bodybuilder, if he's a new guy, I'm usually going pretty flat out where it's like, hey, we're going to do just a linear periodization model to start. It's going to be more so heavier weights. You're going to be in your 6 to 8 range. And then from there, you will slowly get into the actual like hypertrophy zone where it's like, you know, you're like 15 to 20, but because you have to get them to understand what heavy weight feels like and what they can do first. So that's kind of my philosophy where I start with them. After that, I go into pretty much, I mean, I think science has shown well enough now where it's like, hey, if you are going pretty close to failure and you know what that zone is for you and you are doing higher reps, you know, 15 to 20, and you're just smoking yourself, you're going to grow. Like it's kind of tried and true. Like I haven't seen it yet where someone hasn't. Usually when they don't grow in higher reps is because they're not training hard enough or they're going too light. So that's actually one of the videos I was going to post here too about undertraining. I did a video about overtraining, and then I was going to talk about undertraining because a lot of people do that too. They're just like, oh, well, you know, Dr. Mike said that I don't have to go all the way to failure. And it's like, well,
I'm like, have you ever watched Dr. Mike train? He trains pretty hard.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, I'm like people like to think that's what I always laugh at people. It's like, how can you quantify 1 rep in reserve? What his 1 rep in reserve is probably failure for 99.9% of the human population.
It's failure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so for me, failure is mechanical failure. You know, that where the form starts to break down. You're getting into the area where you're going to injure joints and whatnot. But I find that 99.9% of people aren't overtraining. They're almost everybody's. There are a few that overtrain. A guy like you or somebody that's working a manual labor job with a impeccable work ethic might overtrain, but most people aren't overtraining.
No, they're not. They think they're sore and they're like, oh, it's too much, you know, but then again, it's like, okay, well, let me ask you these questions. Like, did you yell at your wife? Are you moody? Are you cranky? No, you're good. Okay. Well, you're probably okay. How's your spine feel? You know, like, and you guys know how this is. You guys are old school. You've been lifting heavy weights for a while. It's like, how does your physical nervous system feel? Are you your hand shaking? Like if you're freaking out and your body's not working, you're overtraining. You should probably slow down. But if you're just sore, shut up. You'll be fine.
There was one time on contest prep. This is the only time in my life where I can say that I was truly overtrained, where I think my CNS was just fried, and I couldn't even do two plates on the leg press. They just would not move. That's overtraining. But being sore, feeling a little beat up, whatever. That's just. I always use the example of special forces guys. I think about the work volume that those guys are doing. Like you were talking about Navy SEALs, how much training they do all day long, and they don't sleep either.
No.
Well,
look at Jocko Willink and whatnot. Like those guys are still freaks.
Yeah, just freaks. Well, I was going to mention too, like I think there's a difference between overtraining and you're injured. Like I sometimes might in my mind use that. Like I have my shoulder's like a little banged up in my elbow, my left arm just last week. I think it's the way I slept or something. So I still trained it, of course, because I'm a meathead, but I still worked it out more, where like a lot of guys probably would say that it's overtrained. That's why I did it. It's like,
to me, that's an overuse injury.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. It's like trying to explain to people like overuse is one thing, but overtraining is like the CNS is shut down. Like you said, you're shaking, you can't focus, all that stuff. Like that's
irritable.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And like your appetite will even suffer. It's like you're hungry, but you can't eat. Like it's weird. It's completely weird. So, but yeah, like I agree with what you said, where it's like, look, if you have a small injury, like I got a banged up shoulder, I did make it to special forces selection, but I blew out my shoulder in the meantime. And then, so I didn't go back because the thought went through my head about my kid. My son was just born, and like I came home and had a blown out shoulder and was like holding my, baby son. And I just looked at him and I was like, if I just spontaneously combust one day, who's going to raise my kid? And I look up and I go, honey, are you going to get remarried if I die in combat? And she's like, probably. And I was like, okay, never mind. I was like, no. I was like, no. We're not going to do that. So I decided. She was blunt. She was in the Army. She told me the truth. She didn't even hide it. So that, you work through injuries, but like, and you know how it is, Joe. There's a difference between I'm injured and I'm working around the injury and like an overuse injury where it's like, hey, you know what? Okay, I've been doing bicep curls and this tendon in here is just inflamed. I can hardly move my arm. It's really just clicking and pulling. And it's like, take it down. Don't freak out. Just maybe bring your reps down and go a little bit lighter for a week or two. You'll be fine. You're not going to lose any muscle. Your arms aren't going to shrink unless you're in prep. Then you're kind of screwed. No, I'm just kidding.
Little bit of question out of left field for both of you, really, because it's something I'm working on. So I'll ask the general question, that I can explain why if it doesn't make sense. But have you ever adjusted either training or carbohydrate intake based on where a woman's cycle is, like in their menstrual cycle at different times? Have you ever looked at that?
You go first, Paul.
I don't really work with women, to be honest with you. I send them elsewhere. I just work with men. I have a couple female clients. No, I do not adjust diet based on cycle, but I mean, that is an interesting idea.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. I don't know enough about it, but I would, I usually don't. But what I just tell them is like, look, on your check-ins, you're going to be a little bit more watery. Because a lot of them, there's a psychological aspect a lot with women where it's like, they do their check-ins, they send their photos up and they're like, well, I gained 2 to 3 pounds. And I'm like, well, yeah. Like tried and true. You're going into your cycle and they're like, yeah, I'm there. I'm like, well, there's your 2 to 3 pounds. It's water and inflammation, so I try not to mess with their diet. Keep as many.
That might go back to your point of running women with more fats than carbs, because carbs tend to make you hold water, whereas the fats don't. So I mean, that would pair with that logic of women responding better.
I kind of looked at, like, obviously from over 20 years ago, like 20 years of Justin, like I'm in the calorie rotation mindset, primarily using carbohydrates to manipulate those. I have a few little differences that I use, but not because they're better, because they're for different people. Like he's working with massive human beings. I'm working general population. And right now, just barely working with anybody, but I do have a model I'm working on. I'll actually send you guys when I'm ready to show you, but it's essentially taking that 28-day cycle, layering in the calorie rotation, like a high, medium, low day based on where their hormones are in that cycle.
Interesting, man.
So that way
that's
there's
good.
progesterone and how that reacts with carbohydrates and how estrogen does. So you know when it's going to spike, and then layer in the training. They might do more high days in a certain fit in a closer phase. So I still am playing with that model, but I read a couple different books and I was like, well, if I put it all, it's none of it's my original thought. So if I can pull from each one and put it together into one model, I'm like, I think it could help a lot of people. And I think just my experience with, I was fortunate, depending on how you look at it, silver lining is with several women that had just horrific panels of hormones to their natural cycles. And so I was able to learn quite a bit about that. So I was just curious if you ever dabble with that or play with it, but I'll definitely flush that out to you guys and Justin, everybody, kind of get some opinions on it. So yeah, just curious about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that.
What else do you have going on, Nick? What else, how's the clientele going right now? And your wife's coaching with you, right? Is it the two of you? Is there other coaches as well, or?
So just the two of us for right now. I've tried, bringing in, like, it's funny because my brother just went off and lost a ton of weight, and, he's getting all into the fitness thing and whatnot too. So he's like, oh, well, I could come in. And I was like, you got to be certified, dude. You have to have some sort of education. You can't just come and coach. I was like, it takes a lot of experience. So right now, just me and her. And you guys know how it is, vetting coaches and finding someone who's actually going to put in the effort that you do too. It's like, you never know nowadays with people in the industry on what they're actually going to give your clients. So as far as that, still working a full-time job, still like pretty much the mornings is my training. I'm coaching up until around 3, and then I'm working up until around 7:30 because, you got to pay the bills. It's just, and I want my kids to go to good schools. So I'm working. That's I think it was Guy Cisternino said that he never stopped working even when he was a pro. He just kept going. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen.
Well, if people don't know, just if they want to find out more about you, you got coachcrayne.com. So I'll make sure that we kind of cut that in for everybody. So if they want to check you out there, and then
nice hams and glutes.
Yeah, that's right. Appreciate that.
So I was too quick on the good shot, right? So let me get that back.
Pop it back. Yeah, put that back up there.
Put that back up there.
You see that drape? Look at that drape right there. That's nice.
It's not bad for what it's 6'5", did you say?
Yep, 6'5".
That's a lot of hamstring for 6'5".
Yeah, I do a lot of hammy because, like you said, that posterior chain. Like, people are afraid. It's like, it's not masculine to train your butt. And it's like,
when you're over 6 feet, Yeah,
the judges gave me hell last year. Told me that I didn't have enough hamstring, so I've been doing a dedicated hamstring and glute day this year. Like you said, training like a bikini competitor.
That's right.
And I've definitely seen results.
Yeah, bring those things up. That's good.
All right, and then because we'll kind of wind down here, but Coach Crayne 27 on Instagram for those of you guys who want to check out. Nick's got a lot of great content, really fun. We hope to selfishly steal him as an affiliate soon, so we'll put pressure on him on camera. That of
course
we want him to be officially part of Team 1D. So come to the dark side,
Right.
But a couple other things. We'll kind of wind down here, unless Paul, if you had any other questions for Nick. I had a quick shoot, move, and communicate, kind of our rapid fire round. We'll end with that, and then you guys will be good to go. So all right, the first question is, can you share an accomplishment you're most proud of outside of the fitness industry?
Oh, that's a lot of them. Oh my goodness. So, wow, that's tough. I mean, because I could save my military service, but I did a lot. I went to you guys know what sapper school is? Do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Ever heard of it? So you know what Ranger School is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So everyone knows Ranger School, of course. Those are the cool guys. So basically, sapper school is the engineer equivalent to Ranger School. So Ranger School is what they compare it to, like a marathon, whereas sapper school is just a dead sprint. So sapper school is about a month and a half. We started out with, I believe it was 87 people in our class. About halfway through, when we get to this patrolling phase, which is pretty much all in the woods, you're like killing wild animals and stuff like that and eating them and whatnot. It's actually pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So
we'll keep you moving because we got to wrap here soon. Sorry.
I'll talk. Sapper school. There you go.
Next up, accomplishment you're most proud of in the fitness industry, what would that be?
Probably that conditioning that you just showed up on screen. That was really hard to do. I'm not gonna lie.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And then if you had just kind of one word advice for, say, a competitor, person who wants to be a competitor, they're in the military right now, what would that what word would you use to describe that person that could make it through it?
I would say persistence and sacrifice. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice, and you're going to have to give up a lot of your personal time. And it's all about what you want to do. What do you want at the end of the day? Because if you don't want to compete and it's not, your heart's not in it, you'll never be able to do the Army and compete at the same time. Period. You won't do
Gotcha.
it. So
Good deal. All right, next up, if you had to miss a meal, a training session, or a night of sleep, what would it be?
Ideally none. That's gains flushed down the toilet. So if I had a meal, I'd probably say a meal personally.
Okay.
I'd probably say a meal. I can't sacrifice sleep. That's just taboo. And training, I love training too much. So
All right. Good deal. Good deal.
yeah.
All right. Last thing, at first attachment, we talk about being all in. And so the question is, can you tell me about something that you're really passionate about, just something that kind of resonates with you, that you're all in on? Like, what's that project or that next goal that you're kind of really passionate about to get after in life right now?
It's still, I mean, obviously I have kids and family, so like just providing is the biggest thing for me, like my biggest driver. But like as far as the fitness industry goes, it's just educating people on those big health markers, the things that they don't know. Because if there's one thing that I've learned in this, it's that most people aren't doing their blood work. They don't know how to read anything. They don't realize that they're sick. And like 95% of Americans have severe metabolic syndrome. Like they are clinically sick, and they don't, I've seen my family, I've seen everyone go through this. So if I can just teach one or two of these people how to properly maintain their lifestyle and how to properly get to a spot where they don't have to, be in Big Pharma's pocket their entire life and, just be popping pills, I think that's a win for me. So that's kind of my goal, to be honest.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, hey, again, Big Paul from Anabolic Bodybuilding on the YouTube channel. If you guys be sure to check him out as well. Thanks so much for joining. And Coach Crayne 27 Instagram. So Nicholas Crayne or CoachCrayne.com, right? That's how they can find you.
Yes. Yep.
And thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll see you. Have a good night.
Thank you.